নমস্কার, আদরণীয় প্রফেসর কুমুদজি শর্মাজি, esteemed Vice President Sahitya Akademi, respected Dr. Srinivas Raoji, esteemed Secretary Sahitya Akademi, Sahitya Academy Fellow, আমার পরম শ্রদ্ধেয় শ্রীযুত নগেন শইকীয়া স্যার, Honorable Vice Chancellor Dibrugarh University Professor Jitin Hazarika, respected Dr. Rita Chaudhuri, Sahitya Academy awardee, eminent novelist, former Director National Book Trust, Professor Orpana Kumar, Sahitya Rathi Lakshminath Besborua at Dibrugarh University, Professor Satyakam Borthakur and Professor Mridul Bordoloi, Joint Coordinator Organizing Committee, along with their esteemed team members, all the esteemed invited speakers, including respected Dr. Korobideka Hazarika Baidu, former convener, Assamese Advisory Board Sahitya Academy, and Dr. Devendra Kumar Deves, Regional Secretary Sahitya Academy, professors, registrars of Dibrugarh Universities, and my dear students, friends, and distinguished guests present in this august house. At the very outset, let me welcome you all to this two-day seminar on the contribution of Assamese literature towards the freedom movement of India, being organized by the Sahitya Academy in collaboration with the prestigious Dibrugarh University. Let us first understand as to what could be the precise essence of the phrase, the contribution of Indian literature towards the freedom movement of India. Surely, it can't be defined otherwise than the reawakening of the needed nationalistic spirit through the varied forms of literary expressions in the consciousness of the people after the moment of inadaptive torpor into which she had lapsed. Sri Aurobindo's following passage, written 100 years ago, is indeed worth noting here. We have practically to, let me quote, quote unquote, we have practically to take three facts into consideration. The great past of Indian culture and life with the moment of inadaptive torpor into which it had lapsed. The first period of the Western contact in which it seemed for a moment likely to perish by slow decomposition, and the ascending movement which first broke into some clarity of expression only a decade or two ago. This reawakening spirit of the ascending movement was in fact the beginning of Indian nationalism in its truest. What then was the mission of this newly awakened nationalism in India, apart from its immediate goal of India's freedom from the British political control over India? Sri Aurobindo concisely yet aptly answers the question. To recover Indian thought, Indian character, Indian perception, Indian energy, Indian greatness, and to solve the problems that perplex the world in an Indian spirit. And from the Indian standpoint, this, in our view, is the mission of nationalism. Not only did the art, literature, and poetry play an important role in recovering all this, reawakening the nation with a consciousness utterly nationalistic in spirit, they were in fact the chief instrument of expression. Before I share my thought on the contribution of Assamese literature in the freedom movement of India, let us have a relook at the emerging psychological state of the people of India felt immediately after the final triumph of Britain over India. As like we need the background of darkness to perceive the value of light, just in that way we can't evaluate the contribution without having an idea of loss incurred. Let us therefore look at a passage of Sri Ramsul, one of the greatest living sages of post-independent India, who has beautifully portrayed the deed and prevailing psychological state of affairs in India in his following luminous words. When two cultures meet on unequal military terms, as the Hindu culture made the West and earlier made Islam, it gives rise to grave problems of self-identity for the defeated party. When India finally realized that she had lost in the military and diplomatic contest and that the British were supreme, she was overwhelmed and filled with a deep sense of inferiority. Under such circumstances, as it usually happens, other non-military forces came into play. Different people sought psychological rehabilitation in different ways. Some retired into their cell and became apathetic. A majority met the situation by self-repudiation and wholesale imitation. They disowned their nationhood and their culture and adopted the ways and attitudes of the victors whom they regarded as their superiors. They saved their self-respect through self-alienation. Now compare this passage with the following passage of late Sitaram Goel, one of the finest thinkers of our times. Let me quote, "Many a freedom fighter mounted the gallows with the Gita in his hands and Bankim Chandra's Vande Mataram on his lips. The partition of Bengal converted Bankim Chandra's Vande Mataram into a mantra by reciting which our people scale the highest height of courage and sacrifice," unquote. This single passage is, I think, enough to make us perceive the inner transformation that took place in the national consciousness over the periods from its state of utter inertia marked out by the self-repudiation to not only that of reawakening and self-assertion, but arising even of a sacred sense of self-sacrifice for the cause of the freedom of the beloved motherland. It could not have happened so effectively but for the powerful expression of the national consciousness in the field of art, literature, and poetry right from the beginning. I would once again like to draw your attention to the following two passages from Sri Aurobindo's writing in order that we may have an idea of the driving force behind this reawakened national consciousness. For without this, we would not be able to review the contribution of Indian literature in proper perspective in her struggle for freedom. Let me quote, "The national mind turned a new eye on its past culture, reawaked to its sense and import, but also at the same time saw it in relation to modern knowledge and ideas. Out of this awakening vision and impulse, the Indian Renaissance is arising, and that must determine its future tendency." On the other hand, while commenting on the contribution of Srijut Ramesh Chandra Datra, he said that no man of our time has these gifts to the same extent as Ramesh Datta. The best things he ever did were, in our view, his letter to Lord Curzon and his economic history. The former fixed public opinion in India irritably and nobody cared even to consider Lord Curzon's answer. Without the economic history and its damning stay of England's commercial and fiscal dealing with India, we doubt whether the public mind would have been ready for the boycott. In this one instance, it may be said of him that he not only wrote history but created it. Let me reiterate that the national mind turned a new eye on its past culture. And second, without the economic history and its damning story of England's commercial and fiscal dealings with India, we doubt whether the public mind would have been ready for the boycott. I am surely not expected to delve deep into the different aspects pertaining to the contribution of Assamese literature in the freedom movement of India, for the task is entirely left to our all esteemed invited speakers. My job is then to highlight on the leitmotif of the Assamese patriotic literature during the pre-independent era, in order that I can vindicate whatever have been spoken by me above in the national context are true in respect of Assamese patriotic literature too. Let me therefore first re-quote a passage from Ramesh Chandra Datta's writing, which was originally quoted by late Srijut Viswanarayan Sastry, one of the finest illustrious son of the soil and an erudite scholar par excellence, in one of his great illustrative write-up titled Nationalism and Patriotism in Assamese Literature. Ramesh Chandra Datta was quoted by him to have said that My sole object has been to narrate the glories of the past. Again, the past. My sole object has been to narrate the glories of the past and the greatness of our national heroes. If I have succeeded in kindling a single spark of love and admiration for our national heroes, then not in vain did I take up my pen. Srijut Bishnarayan Sastry too observes, after having quoted Ramesh Chandra Datta, that it will be seen that this objective was in view when the pioneers in Assamese literature wrote novels and dramas. He, that is to say Ramesh Chandra Datta, by his economic analysis tried to improve the condition of the masses, and by historical novels and kindle the spirit of the glory of the past. Srijut Bishnarayan Sastry continues, this preliminary introduction is made here only to show that the young Assamese students who received their education in Calcutta were motivated by these two aspects. And what are those two aspects then? The national mind turned a new eye on its past culture, and without the economic history and its damning story of England's commercial and fiscal dealings with India, we doubt whether the public mind would have been ready for the boycott. This preliminary introduction is made, as said by Bishnarayan Sastry, this preliminary introduction is made here only to show that the young Assamese students who received their education in Calcutta were motivated by these two aspects for the improvement of the condition of Assamese people. The trend of patriotism in Assamese literature may be traced in the expressions relating to the condition of Assam, its literature and cultural heritage. This may be divided into three categories, namely through literature, through economic development, and political freedom. Srijut Bishnarayan Sastry continues further that towards the end of the 19th century, the Assamese students in Calcutta formed an association titled Asamiya Bhakar Unnoti Khatini Sabha. The Sabha's objective was to inculcate the spirit of patriotism through literature and make the people aware of the heritage of the past. Make the people aware of the heritage of the past. It is then in this backdrop of the leitmotif of the Assamese patriotic literature, the tremendous contribution made by the indefatigable pioneering efforts of the literary geniuses of Assam, from Lakshminath Besbarua, Padmanath Guhai Borua, Rajanikanto Bordoloi, Radhanath Phukon, Kamalakanta Bhattacharya, Ambikagiri Rai Chaudhuri, Prasannalal Chaudhuri, Chandra Kumar Agarwalatu, to Desabhakta Tarunram Phukon, Karmabir Navin Chandra Bordoloi, Lakshmidhar Sharma, Kanak Chandra Sharma, Atul Chandra Hazarika, Nolini Bala Devi, Padmadhar Shaliha, Binanda Chandra Borua, Bagmibir Nilamani Phukon, Jyoti Prasad, Virendra Kumar Bhattacharya, Satya Prasad Borua, Praveen Phukon, Virinshu Kumar Borua, Dinanath Sharma, Benudhar Sharma, Vijay Chandra Bhagavati, Devakanta Borua, Bhupen Hazarika, and many more have to be reviewed and evaluated in respect of both the pre-independent as well as the post-independent period. With these few introductory words, along with my namaskar and gratitude to all of you, I finally conclude here. Dhanyabad and namaskar to all.